The starward Hope moved through the darkness of space like a small silver fish swimming toward a gathering of whales. Commander Daniel Price stood at the bridge window and watched the distant lights of the Council station grow larger. He had served in the human fleet for 20 years, but he had never seen anything as massive as the structure ahead. It was a city floating in the void, home to representatives from over 200 alien species. Humanity had earned a seat there only 12 years ago, and they were still considered children by the elder races. Ambassador Lisa Monroe walked onto the bridge with a warm smile on her face. She was a tall woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She had spent her entire career building bridges between cultures, first on Earth and now among the stars. This mission was the most important of her life. She hoped to negotiate expanded trade rights for Earth's growing colonies. Humanity needed resources, and the Council controlled access to the richest systems in the galaxy. "How long until we arrive?" Lisa asked. Daniel checked his instruments. "About 3 hours. The Council has cleared us for approach." Lisa nodded and looked at the station through the window. "It's beautiful, isn't it? 200 species working together. Imagine what humanity could learn from them." Daniel said nothing. He had met enough aliens to know that not all of them welcomed humanity's arrival. Some saw humans as useful trading partners. Others saw them as pests that bred too quickly and spread too far. He kept his concerns to himself. His job was to deliver the ambassador safely, not to share his worries. In the Council station, High Counselor and of the Dominion watched the human ship approach on his private display. He was a tall creature with pale blue skin and 4 arms. His species had ruled a quarter of the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had built the Council. They had written its laws. And now they watched with growing alarm as humans spread across the stars like a disease. And pressed a button and the display showed a map of human expansion. 12 years ago, humans had controlled one system. Now they had colonies in 37 systems. Their population grew faster than any species the Council had ever recorded. Their ships improved with each passing year. Their soldiers fought with a ferocity that disturbed even the warrior races of the galaxy. The door to his chamber opened and Counselor Lee of the Collective entered. There were small beings covered in soft brown fur. They were known for their wisdom and their caution. Lee had served on the Council for over a century. "You wanted to see me?" Lee asked, and gestured to the display. "Look at them. 12 years ago they were nothing. Now they threaten everything we have built." Lee studied the map. "They have grown quickly, yes, but they remain a minor power. Their military is small compared to ours." "For now," and said, "but you have seen their birth rates. You have seen how fast they learn. In another 50 years they could challenge the Dominion itself." Lee felt a chill run through his body. He knew what he was suggesting. "What do you propose?" And turned off the display. "The human diplomatic ship will arrive in a few hours. It carries their ambassador and her staff, 23 humans in total." "I know this," Lee said. "We are scheduled to meet with them tomorrow." And smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "There will be no meeting. Council warships are already in position along their approach route. They have been modified to appear as pirate vessels. When the attack comes, the humans will believe they were killed by criminals." Lee stared at the High Counselor in horror. "You cannot be serious. This is murder. This is an act of war." "This is survival," and replied. "The humans are emotional creatures with short. When their ambassador dies, they will mourn. They will retreat to their corner of space and lick their wounds. They will remember that the galaxy is dangerous and that they are not ready to challenge the elder races. And if they investigate, if they discover the truth," and waved away the concern with one of his 4 hands, "they will find nothing. Our ships will destroy themselves after the attack. The humans will have no evidence, and even if they suspect us, what can they do? Their fleet is tiny. Their technology is primitive. They cannot hurt us." Lee wanted to argue, but he saw the determination in his eyes. The High Counselor had made his decision. Other powerful members of the Council supported this plan. Lee was only one voice among many. "I want no part of this," Lee said quietly. "You do not need to participate. Simply remain silent. When the news arrives tomorrow, express your sympathy for the humans. Play your role, and this will all be over quickly." Lee left the chamber without another word. He walked through the corridors of the station with a heavy heart. He had always believed the Council represented the best of galactic civilization. Now he saw it for what it truly was, a tool of the powerful, used to crush the weak. On the Starward Hope, Ambassador Lisa Monroe reviewed her notes for the upcoming negotiations. Her assistant, a young man named Peter, brought her a cup of coffee. Nervous, Peter asked. Lisa laughed. A little. This is the biggest moment of my career. If we succeed, Earth's colonies will have access to resources we desperately need. Our children will grow up in a galaxy of opportunity. Peter smiled. He was only 25 years old, the youngest member of the diplomatic team. He had joined the mission because he believed in Lisa's vision of a united galaxy. He dreamed of a future where humans and aliens worked together as equals. I think you will convince them, Peter said. You always do. Lisa patted his hand. Thank you, Peter. Now get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be a long day. Peter left the ambassador's quarters and walked to his own small cabin. He looked out the window at the stars and felt hope fill his chest. He did not know that Council warships were already moving into position around them. He did not know that in a few short hours, his life would end in fire and pain. He only knew that he was part of something important, something that would bring humanity closer to the stars. The trap was set. The killers waited in the darkness, and the starward Hope flew toward its death, carrying 23 souls who had come in peace and would receive only violence in return. In her quarters, Ambassador Lisa Monroe recorded a final message for her family back on Earth. She spoke of her excitement, her hopes, her dreams for humanity's future. She ended the recording with 3 simple words. I love you. She sent the message and went asleep. In a few hours, the Council would give its answer to humanity's outstretched hand. It would not be the answer Lisa hoped for. It would be an answer written in blood. The attack came without warning. Commander Daniel Price was drinking coffee on the bridge when alarms began screaming throughout the ship. He dropped his cup and ran to the sensor station. What he saw made his blood turn cold. 6 warships had appeared around the starward Hope. They had emerged from some kind of cloaking field and now surrounded the small diplomatic vessel like wolves around a wounded deer. Identify those ships, Daniel shouted. His sensor officer, a woman named Corinne Wells, worked frantically at her station. They are broadcasting pirate signatures, Commander, but something is wrong. Their formation is too perfect. Pirates do not coordinate like this. Before Daniel could respond, the first weapon's fire struck the ship. The starward Hope shook violently and threw everyone to the floor. Lights flickered. Smoke poured from damaged systems. Daniel pulled himself up and grabbed the communication console. This is Commander Daniel Price of the Earth diplomatic vessel Starward Hope. We are on a peaceful mission to the Galactic Council. Cease fire immediately. There was no response, only more weapons fire. Ambassador Lisa Monroe ran onto the bridge with blood running from a cut on her forehead. She had been thrown against a wall by the first impact. Her eyes were wide with confusion and fear. What is happening? She demanded. We are under attack, Daniel said. 6 ships. They claim to be pirates, but Corinne thinks they might be something else. Lisa looked at the tactical display and saw the enemy ships closing in. This makes no sense. Pirates do not attack diplomatic vessels. The entire galaxy would hunt them down. Another blast rocked the ship. A section of the hull collapsed in the back of the bridge, killing 2 crew members instantly. Daniel shouted orders to his surviving crew, but there was little they could do. The Starward Hope was a diplomatic vessel. It carried minimal weapons and light shields. It was designed for peaceful missions, not combat. Corinne Wells stared at her sensor readings with growing horror. Commander, I have penetrated their false signatures. These are not pirate ships. Then what are they? Daniel asked. Corinne looked up at him with tears in her eyes. They are Council warships, design, military grade. The bridge fell silent except for the sounds of alarms and distant explosions. Lisa Monroe felt her heart break as she understood what was happening. The Council had sent them an invitation. The Council had welcomed them to negotiate, and the Council had sent warships to kill them. Why? Lisa whispered. We came in peace. We only wanted to talk. Daniel had no answer for her. He only knew that his ship was dying and his people were dying with it. He made a decision. He could not save his crew, but he could make sure the truth survived. Corinne launched the emergency beacon. Upload all sensor data, including the true signatures of those ships. Make sure Earth knows what happened here. Corinne worked quickly despite her shaking hands. The beacon launched from the dying ship and accelerated toward human space. It carried the evidence of murder. It carried the last words of the dead. The enemy ships concentrated their fire on the bridge. Daniel threw himself over Ambassador Monroe, trying to protect her with his body. It was a useless gesture. The bridge exploded around them, and everything went white. Peter died in his cabin without ever knowing what killed him. He was looking at a picture of his family when the wall beside him disappeared in fire. His last thought was of his mother back on Earth. The battle lasted 7 minutes from start to finish. When it was over, the starward Hope was nothing but scattered debris floating in the void. 23 humans had died. Their bodies drifted among the wreckage, cold and silent in the darkness of space. The Council warships activated their self-destruct systems and vanished in balls of fire. No evidence remained except the small beacon racing toward Earth at faster-than-light speed. On Earth, Admiral Shaw sat in her office at Fleet Command. She was a stern woman with silver hair and sharp eyes. She had commanded human forces for 30 years and had seen humanity grow from a single planet to a spacefaring civilization. She loved her species with fierce devotion. A young officer knocked on her door and entered with a pale face. "Admiral, we have lost contact with the Starward Hope." Felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. "When?" "3 hours ago. They missed their scheduled check-in. We have been unable to reach them since." Stood and walked to the window. She looked out at the city below, at the millions of humans going about their daily lives. They did not know that something terrible had happened among the stars. "Send search and rescue ships immediately, full speed to their last known position." The young officer saluted and left. Remained at the window, hoping that her fears were wrong, praying that the crew of the Starward Hope had simply experienced a communication failure. 3 days later, a patrol ship recovered the emergency beacon. The data was transmitted to Fleet Command within minutes. Admiral Shaw watched the sensor recordings alone in her office. She saw Council warships hiding behind fake pirate signatures. She saw them surround the Starward Hope. She saw them open fire on a peaceful diplomatic vessel. She watched Ambassador Lisa Monroe die. She watched Commander Daniel Price die trying to protect her. She watched 23 of her people murdered in cold blood by the very allies they had come to negotiate with. When the recording ended, sat in silence for a long time. Her hands trembled. Her jaw was clenched so tight that her teeth ached. She had served through many crises in her career, but she had never felt rage like this. It burned in her chest like a living fire. She forwarded the data to every major leader on Earth. Within hours, the president, the prime ministers, the generals, the admirals, all of them had seen the footage. The response was unanimous and immediate. Earth went silent. All human ships from Council space. Trade agreements were suspended. Communication channels went dark. Human ambassadors returned home without explanation. The Council watched this retreat with satisfaction. High Counselor and smiled when he heard the news. The humans were behaving exactly as he had predicted. They were running home to hide and mourn their dead. What N did not understand was what human silence meant. It was not the silence of defeat. It was not the silence of fear. It was the silence of a predator preparing to strike. It was the silence before the storm. On Earth, Admiral Shaw began making plans. The Council had spilled human blood. Now the Council would learn the price of that crime. Every drop would be repaid 1,000 times over. The 23 dead would have their justice, would make sure of it, even if she had to burn half the galaxy to do it. 6 months passed after the destruction of the Starward Hope. On the Council station, life continued as normal. The elder races attended their meetings, made their deals, and discussed matters of galactic importance. The death of 23 humans was barely remembered. It was a minor incident, a small adjustment to keep the galaxy in proper order. High Counselor N was pleased with how events had unfolded. Human ships no longer entered Council space. Human diplomats no longer requested meetings. Human merchants no longer competed for contracts. The threat had been eliminated with surgical precision. Counselor Lee of the Collective did not share this satisfaction. He sat in his chambers and studied reports from the border with human space. What he saw troubled him deeply. Human patrol ships had tripled in number along the frontier. Their shipyards were operating at maximum capacity, producing vessels at a rate that should have been impossible. Their military academies had accelerated their training programs, graduating officers months ahead of schedule. Lee requested a meeting with him to discuss his concerns. The High Counselor agreed to see him, though his tone made it clear he considered the meeting a waste of time. "You worry too much," and said when Lee presented his findings. "The humans are afraid. They are building defenses because they expect us to attack again. It is a natural response from a primitive species." "This does not look defensive to me," Lee replied. "They are building warships, not patrol vessels. Their factories produce weapons, not shields. Their soldiers train for assault, not protection." And waved away the concerns with his four hands. Even if the humans wanted revenge, what could they do? Their fleet is tiny compared to ours. Their technology is inferior. They have been spacefaring for less than a century. We have ruled the stars for 10,000 years. Lee wanted to argue further, but he saw the dismissal in En's eyes. The High Counselor was certain of his own superiority. He could not imagine that humans posed any real threat. Lee left the meeting with fear growing in his heart. On Earth, Admiral Shaw stood in a massive underground command center. Hundreds of officers worked at stations around her, coordinating the largest military buildup in human history. Every shipyard on Earth and every human colony worked around the clock. Factories that once produced consumer goods now manufactured missiles and armor plating. Farms that once grew food now grew soldiers. The people of Earth supported this effort without complaint. When news of the massacre had spread, grief had united humanity like nothing before. Every family felt the loss. Every citizen burned with rage. Politicians who suggested caution were voted out of office. Those who called for blood were elevated to power. Commander Miller entered the command center and approached Admiral Shaw. He was a young man with dark skin and intelligent eyes. He had been a tactical instructor at the military academy before the massacre. Now he led the team designing humanity's response. "The fleet is ready," reported. 1,200 warships armed with our weapons, 50,000 Marines trained for planetary assault, supply lines established along 3 different routes. Study the tactical display on the wall. It showed the position of every human ship and every known Council installation. 12 years of quiet observation had taught humanity exactly where the Council was weak. "What about the operation timeline?" asked. "We can launch in 72 hours. The Council has no idea we are coming. Their patrol patterns have not changed. Their defensive stations remain at normal readiness. They believe we are hiding in our corner of space." Nodded slowly. She thought of Ambassador Lisa Monroe, who had died believing in peace. She thought of Commander Daniel Price, who had tried to protect her with his own body. She thought of Peter, only 25 years old, who had dreamed of a united galaxy. "Launch in 72 hours, ordered. Operation Reckoning begins." On the Council station, a young diplomat named worked late into the night. She was small even by standards, with large curious eyes and soft gray fur. She had joined the diplomatic service because she believed in justice and cooperation between species. Now she investigated a crime that threatened everything she believed. Had discovered unusual financial transfers in the weeks before the human diplomatic ship was destroyed. Council funds had been diverted to secret shipyards. Military officers had received large payments with no explanation. Communication records had been deleted, but fragments remained in backup systems. The evidence pointed to a terrible conclusion. The attack on the Starboard Hope was not the work of pirates. It was a planned assassination ordered by High Counselor and himself. Gathered her evidence and requested an emergency meeting with the Council's Justice Committee. She believed that the truth would matter, that the Council would punish those responsible and apologize to humanity. She still had faith in the system she served. The Justice Committee listened to her presentation in silence. When she finished, the chairman thanked her for her diligence. Guards entered the room and placed restraints on her wrists. "What is happening?" demanded. "I have evidence of murder." "You have evidence of nothing," the chairman replied coldly. "You have been spreading dangerous lies that threaten galactic stability. You will be held until you can be properly rehabilitated." They took her to a cell deep in the station. She sat in the darkness and wept for everything she had believed. The Council was not what she thought it was. Justice did not exist here. Only power mattered, and she had none. In her cell, wondered what the humans were doing. Were they mourning their dead? Were they building their defenses? Or were they planning something that no one in the Council could imagine? She hoped they would come. She hoped they would burn everything to the ground and build something better from the ashes. Across the galaxy, human fleets began moving toward Council space. They traveled in complete communication silence, using routes that Council patrols never monitored. They moved through dead systems and empty space, invisible in the darkness between stars. Admiral Shaw stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Eternal Vengeance. She watched her fleet spread across her tactical display like a tide of steel and fire. 1,200 ships carrying the rage of an entire species. 1,200 ships coming to collect a debt written in blood. The Council had no warning. Their sensors showed nothing unusual. Their patrols reported peaceful skis. Their leaders slept comfortably in their beds, certain of their safety. They did not know that death was coming. They did not know that they had awakened something terrible. They did not know that the humans they had dismissed as weak and primitive were about to teach them the true meaning of war. The largest invasion force in human history crossed into Council territory. The silence continued. The storm gathered its strength. And then it broke. The attack began at dawn according to Council Standard Time. Human fleets emerged from faster-than-light travel at 12 different locations across Council space. They appeared without warning, without announcement, without mercy. Military installations that had stood for centuries vanished in storms of fire within minutes. Admiral Shaw commanded the primary assault on them. Her fleet of 300 warships dropped out of directly above the planet's orbital defense grid. They had built these defenses over thousands of years. They believed the installations were impenetrable. They were wrong. Human weapons tore through shields that had never been tested against truly hostile enemies. Stations that had served as symbols of power became tombs for their crews. The orbital grid that protected the collapsed in less than 2 hours. Watched the destruction from her bridge with cold satisfaction. She felt no joy in the killing. She only felt the weight of the 23 souls she was avenging. Every enemy ship that burned was payment for their blood. On the Council station, chaos erupted as reports flooded in from across territory. High Counselor stood in the central command chamber and screamed at his officers, demanding to know how this had happened. How had human ships entered Council space undetected? How had they known exactly where to strike? How had their weapons become so powerful? No one had answers. The humans had spent 12 years watching and learning. They had studied Council tactics and technology. They had identified every weakness, every blind spot, every vulnerability, and they had prepared in silence while the Council celebrated its easy victory. Counselor Lee entered the command chamber with fear written across his furry face. He had warned about this possibility. He had begged the High Counselor to prepare defenses. Now his worst fears were becoming reality. "We are receiving requests for surrender from multiple systems," Lee reported. "The Collective has withdrawn all forces from territory. The Federation has done the same. Our allies are abandoning us." And turned on him with rage burning in his eyes. Cowards, they swore to defend the Council. They swore to stand with the. They swore to defend against external threats, Lee replied quietly. They did not swear to die for your crimes. Before N could respond, alarms screamed throughout the station. Human ships had been detected approaching the Council station itself. They were coming for the heart of galactic civilization. Commander Miller led the assault team that would board the station. His ship, a fast attack cruiser named Retribution, raced ahead of the main fleet. He stood in the landing bay surrounded by 500 Marines in full combat armor. Every soldier carried the names of the Starboard Hope's crew written on their armor. They would carry the dead with them into battle. "Listen up," shouted over the noise of the engines. "Our target is the Council chamber. High Counselor N and his conspirators are inside. Our orders are to take them alive if possible. They will face human justice for their crimes, but if they resist, put them down. No one escapes." The Marines roared their approval. They had trained for this moment for 6 months. They had memorized the layout of the Council station. They knew every corridor, every access point, every defensive position. The Council thought its station was a fortress. The Marines would prove it was a trap. The Retribution breached the station's outer hull and led his soldiers into the corridors. Resistance was light at first. Station security forces had never faced determined human soldiers. They broke and ran after the first exchanges of fire. Deeper inside the station, soldiers prepared a defensive line. They were the elite guard of the High Counselor, warriors who had served the Dominion for centuries. They believed humans were weak creatures who could be easily defeated. Marines hit their line like a hammer. The fighting was brutal and close. Humans fell, but more came behind them. The warriors were skilled, but they had never faced enemies who fought with such fury. The humans attacked without hesitation, without fear, driven by a rage that terrified their opponents. The line broke. The survivors retreated toward the council chamber, pursued by Marines who gave them no rest. In the council chamber, and watched the tactical displays with growing despair. His fleet was shattered. His allies had abandoned him. His station was being invaded by creatures he had dismissed as insignificant pests. Everything he had built over centuries of careful planning was collapsing around him. Admiral Shaw's voice came through the communication system. It was broadcast to every speaker on the station. High Counselor N. I am Admiral Shaw of the United Earth Defense Force. 6 months ago, you ordered the murder of 23 human beings. You thought we were weak. You thought we would accept this crime and retreat. You were wrong. And listened with 4 hands clenched into fists. I offer you one chance to survive. Surrender yourself and all officials involved in the massacre. Face human justice. If you refuse, we will tear this station apart and drag you from the rubble. The choice is yours. And looked at the officials gathered around him. 17 of them had participated in planning the attack on the Starward Hope. They had signed the orders. They had transferred the funds. They had covered up the evidence. Now they looked to him for guidance. We do not surrender to lesser species, and declared, order all remaining forces to fight to the last ship. The Council has endured for 10,000 years. It will not fall to these primitives. The order went out. Some forces obeyed. Many did not. The collective formally from the Council and offered to help locate in. The Federation followed. Species that had served the Council for turned their backs on the in a single day. The Council, the greatest political structure in galactic history, fractured and died in the span of hours. Its member species scattered like leaves in a hurricane, desperate to escape the human storm. Miller and his Marines reached the doors of the Council chamber. Explosives blasted them open, and the soldiers poured through. An's personal guard fought with desperate courage, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. When the fighting ended, stood over the body of the last defender. The council chamber was silent except for the moans of the wounded, and stood at the far end of the room, surrounded by his fellow conspirators. They had nowhere left to run. Walked toward them with his weapon raised. He thought of Ambassador Lisa Monroe, who had believed in peace. He thought of Commander Daniel Price, who had given his life protecting her. He thought of Peter, only 25 years old, who had dreamed of a better galaxy. High Counselor N said, "You are under arrest for the murder of 23 citizens of Earth. You will be transported to our to face trial. If you resist, I am authorized to use lethal force." And looked at the human standing before him. For the first time in his long life, he understood his mistake. He had thought he was exterminating pests. He had been awakening predators. "I surrender," and whispered. Smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Smart choice. Now get on your knees. You have a long journey ahead of you, and justice waits at the end of it." The trial of High Counselor N was broadcast across the galaxy. Billions of beings from hundreds of species watched as the most powerful figure in known space stood before human judges. He wore simple prisoner clothes instead of his ceremonial robes. His 4 hands were bound with restraints designed for alien physiology. The arrogance that had defined his rule was gone, replaced by something that looked very much like fear. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Sensor recordings from the Starward Hope showed Council warships hiding behind fake pirate signatures. Financial records proved the transfer of funds to secret shipyards. Communication logs revealed conversations wherein himself ordered the attack. There was no defense possible, no argument that could explain away what he had done. Ambassador Lisa Monroe's final message was played for the court. Her face appeared on screens across the galaxy as she spoke of hope and friendship between species. She talked about her dreams for humanity's future among the stars. She ended with 3 simple words to her family. "I love you." The courtroom fell silent and could not meet anyone's eyes. 17 other council officials stood trial alongside him. All of them had participated in the conspiracy. All of them had believed they could murder humans without consequence. The evidence against each one was presented methodically and completely. The verdict was guilty on all counts. The sentence was death by spacing. The condemned would be ejected into the void at the exact coordinates where the Starward Hope had been destroyed. They would die where their victims had died. The executions were not broadcast, but the galaxy knew they happened. One by one, the conspirators were pushed through airlocks into the darkness of space. Their bodies joined the debris of the diplomatic ship they had destroyed. Justice had been served. Admiral Shaw addressed the surviving members of the council in the same chamber wherein had once ruled. She stood where he used to stand, and her voice carried the weight of human authority. "Humanity did not want this war," she said. "We came to the council seeking trade and cooperation. We offered friendship. You answered with murder." The alien representatives listened in silence. Many of them had opposed N's plan. Many of them had known nothing about it, but all of them understood that the galaxy had changed forever. "The council as you knew it is finished. The Dominion has surrendered unconditionally. Their fleet is destroyed. Their leadership is dead. They will no longer rule this galaxy." Paused to let her words settle, then she continued. "But humanity does not seek to replace one empire with another. We propose a new structure, a galactic assembly where every species has an equal voice. No more elder races and lesser races. No more hierarchies based on age or power. Every species that joins will be treated with respect and dignity." Counselor Lee of the collective stepped forward. He had opposed the attack on the Starward Hope. He had tried to expose the truth. Now he had a chance to help build something better. "The collective accepts humanity's proposal," Lee declared. "We were wrong to let fear guide our actions. We should have stood against it when we had the chance. We will not make that mistake again." Other species followed this lead. Within days, more than half of the former council members had agreed to join the new Galactic Assembly. Those who refused were left alone, isolated in their corners of space while the galaxy reorganized around them. The young diplomat was released from her prison cell and brought before Admiral Shaw. She had been imprisoned for trying to expose the truth about the massacre. Now she stood blinking in the light of freedom, unsure what would happen next. "I understand you tried to seek justice for our people," said, "even when it meant risking your own safety." Nodded slowly. "I believed the council would do the right thing. I was wrong about that, but I was not wrong about what was right." Smiled for the first time in months. "The new assembly needs diplomats who believe in justice. Would you consider serving as the representative to humanity?" Accepted without hesitation. In the years that followed, she became one of the most respected figures in galactic politics. She worked alongside human diplomats to build trust between species that had once viewed each other with suspicion and fear. She never forgot the lessons of those dark days, and she made sure others remembered them too. 5 years after the war, a memorial was constructed at the coordinates where the Starward Hope had been destroyed. It was a simple structure of white stone floating in the void, illuminated by lights that never dimmed. 23 names were carved into its surface. Ambassador Lisa Monroe was first on the list. Commander Daniel Price followed. Peter, the young assistant who had dreamed of a united galaxy. Corinne Wells, the censor officer who had discovered the truth in her final moments. 19 others who had come in peace and received only death. An inscription ran beneath the names, written in every language known to galactic civilization. They came in friendship. They were answered with blood. Their deaths gave birth to a new galaxy. Ships from every member of the Galactic Assembly passed by the memorial on their way through the system. Crews would pause their duties and observe a moment of silence. New recruits in the human fleet were required to visit the site before receiving their assignments. They would stand at the viewing ports and read the names, understanding the weight of the uniform they wore. Admiral Shaw visited the memorial on its dedication day. She stood alone in the observation chamber of her flagship, looking at the white stone against the black void. She had spent 5 years consumed by the mission of vengeance and justice. Now it was complete, and she felt only emptiness. "Was it worth it?" she whispered to the darkness. No answer came. The dead could not speak. They could not tell her if her choices had honored their memory or betrayed their dreams of peace. She would have to live with that uncertainty for the rest of her life. But as she turned to leave, she saw a convoy of ships passing the memorial. Vessels and human vessels traveling together, their crews exchanging greetings over open communication channels. Laughter crossed the void between them. Friendship where there had once been suspicion. Realized that the answer was in front of her. The 23 had died seeking connection between species. Their deaths had almost led to eternal hatred instead. But humanity had chosen to build rather than destroy after the killing was done. The new galaxy taking shape around her was their true memorial. She saluted the white stone one final time and returned to her duties. The war was over. The work of peace had begun. And across the galaxy, a lesson echoed in the minds of every species that had witnessed humanity's response to the massacre. You do not spill human blood without consequence. You do not harm their people and expect them to forget. Humans protect their own with a ferocity that defies all reason. Push them, and they will push back with the force of 1,000 suns. The Council had learned this lesson. The galaxy would never forget it.